Before this music gets killed completely and it's only 5 seconds long, how do you really feel about that song?
I don't have any strong, outstanding opinions on it. I think it's a good kind of mood setter.
Yeah.
You know, I also come from like knowing that you need like unlicensed music too. So it's like, that's a good kind of general, just kind of something to throw out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because I've only had one person really dislike it. And then I had another person tell me it sounds like clown music. And this is all very recently. So I was just curious before the song.
Are they talking about like insane clown music? I only knew a couple of their songs. So I don't know if that fits their catalog or not.
You know, now that you say that, I think it kind of does. There are certain songs. There's one I used to listen to, Play With Me. You remember that one?
I don't.
Play With Me kind of reminds me of that. I'm going to have to listen to it after this now.
Yeah. But I mean, so if that song was going again, if you think about how they would rap over it, I think it kind of fits. So I could see where it could be clown music.
Yeah.
I don't, that's not the first thing that stands out when I hear it.
It wasn't for me either, but she brought it up, and this was just like last week. I was like, oh, and apparently she's...
And now it's one of those things that you just kind of like, or kind of subconsciously aware of the whole time.
And I'm glad I'm not afraid of clowns or anything, because I feel like I'd have to change it completely at that point.
Yeah.
But Kevin, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule to join us, man.
Yeah.
You have it looks like a plethora of stories here.
I have a lot of stories. So a little bit of a backstory about me.
Yeah.
Why I'm even here. So primarily my history is working in strip clubs as a DJ, if you couldn't figure it out. I started actually working in radio. I was 17 years old when I got my job working at a local rock radio station up in Topeka, Kansas. And I did that for about 7 years. And usually your trajectory is you would work in the club scene and then kind of find your way into radio. I did it backwards. So I was started in radio, and then I started getting hit up by clubs and eventually wound up there. And I ended up staying in there. Like when I was in Kansas, I was there for about 4 years. And then I came to Austin, and it was close to 10 when I was here. So it's definitely an environment that's got some stories to it. Not the prototypical ones that you would think of, at least in my, line. It was, like everybody's always expecting like crazy stripper stories. What did she do when she was messed up or whatever? And it's like, I never encountered that as much because I, for the most part, tended to work with people that were kind of goal focused of like, get in, do your thing, get out.
Yeah.
Not too much. However, up in Kansas during that time and where a plethora of these stories are, I was 21 through 24 at that time. So whole lot of poor judgment stories at that time.
Learning curves and stuff like that.
Yeah. And at the time too, I think what fueled a lot of that, aside from just the people you were with, was also the money you were making at that time. So like I would get a weekly check, and then I would get cash tips on top.
Nice.
And they would match. So the checks would pay for my life. They would take care of my car. They would take care of my apartment, groceries, all that stuff. And then the cash on top was it was fun time. And that definitely all went away at that time. When I came to Austin, I definitely kind of focused the goal up a little bit and was like, okay, we're going to put this to good use. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of partying in that time.
Do you think that when you say that you don't have these crazy stripper stories and all that stuff, not that you don't, but in general, do you think it's because of the establishment that you worked at?
It could have been. I don't want to say that they weren't unremarkable in a way, but it was just, there were so many like dancers you're working with, and there was so many little intricate they had a problem with this, and and there was this going on, and she got too drunk. I mean, there was enough of it that it was kind of like white noise in the background.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I say about working in the club. So like I did it for so long, and everybody's always like, "Oh my God, dude, that's like the best job," and da 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 da. And it was like, for me, it was like, living next to the mountains. It's like they're there, and anytime that somebody comes in, they're all like, "Whoa!" And it's like, "Oh yeah, I guess the scenery is pretty cool," but after a while, it was just like, it's background noise. It's the thing I have to work to take care of, and then when that time ends, it's done. And then the fun times usually were after the hours of operation. Like you had to be the responsible one, take care of like security when you had to take care of it, take care of, the entertainers, security. But when it was done, then it was kind of free time a little bit. So yeah.
I enjoy the mountains line there. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, and that was kind of the thing that I always dealt with, because, I've had roommates and friends. They were always, that kind of wide eyed, like, "Oh my gosh, dude, you get to see this, and dude, I'm sure you are hooking up and blah, 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 blah." It's like, well, I mean, they're coworkers, and, they're trying to get through their shit without as much crazy that they have to deal with from the customers. So it's like, you don't want to really add to that trauma.
Yeah.
A little bit. And plus you're there to, you're being tipped out by them. So as low stress as you can be to them, kind of beneficial to you.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Very smart. How long did it take you to learn that part?
Probably a couple years. So, when I started working in the club, I was there in Topeka. There were like a family of 3 clubs, and there was like the high volume, and then there was these other 2 I didn't really know about, the one I'd end up being at. So 2 of them were kind of like in town, and then one of them was like kind of northwest-ish of town a little bit. I could have the directions wrong, whatever. You're not going to look it up on a map. But anyway, so I was at the high volume one, and there were like 2-3 guys there that were kind of solid. And so that's kind of where I was like cutting my teeth at. And after a while, they had this club I would end up at, which is called Baby Dolls. They had a setup which was a DJ who solely focused on music, and then an MC who would be on the floor kind of razzing people up, trying to get them to go tip and buying them shots, and it's trying to be in the life of the party. It's kind of like your 6 man, And so when I started, I was kind of there on the weekends, kind of learning. I was still working in radio. And then the owner confronted me and asked me if I wanted to go to this club and run it, because he wanted to get rid of the MC that was there. Because that guy was there for 20 years or so, but he would definitely be the guy that would like, "Hey guys, we got blah, 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 blah going on," run off and do a little line and come back and, "Whoop, we got this going on. We got this going on." And just after enough years of it, he kind of got tired of it and was like, somebody else has a little bit of clout to him and seems to be on their shit, so let's bring him in.
Yeah.
And so that's where that kind of started. And then they had promised me an advancement to management at some point within a few years. Keep in mind, I'm like my younger 20s. So I finally become a manager at like 23. And managers also got to drink for free. And that's where a lot of this problems come from, was that kind of unhinged, like, well, there's no one saying stop, and I kind of take care of the inventory. So, who's going to know if this bottle's a little bit lower than it used to be? Yeah. So, yeah. And then the guy that I was managing with at night, we definitely were the type where we were kind of like egging each other on and kind of fueling each other on the shenanigans. So
that's the way it should be, though. You got to have a tag team partner.
Yeah, for sure. So it was like, we would either post up at a table somewhere or, whatever. But he would have kind of a small little crew of a few people he knew, and then I would kind of come in and we would drink. And then I'd finally hit that kind of golden zone that you need to be in to be kind of lively. And then, yeah, we would just kind of roll the night out, and then 2:30 hits, call it. And then if there was fun to be had, there was. If not, we come back the next day and do it. So, yeah, that's kind of how that rolled there for the tenure that I was there.
It sounds like it was exciting, and you learned a lot, probably.
Yeah.
Some life lessons for sure.
Definitely some wisdoms that you wouldn't necessarily get in a traditional setting, for sure.
What was the biggest difference between the clubs there and the clubs in Austin for you?
I think, well, so, I mean, the crazy is going to be there. It's not exclusive. It's just kind of whether or not you want to get involved or not. And I was young enough in Topeka to where I didn't have a problem with that. And I had friends in it. And I just went into it hard and heavy. When I came to Austin, like I said, I had my vision in mind of what I wanted to get out of it, and definitely nipped a lot of things in the bud to get there, and but I would say one of maybe the key differences would be, like, I think it's just kind of a Kansas thing of, like, there's just not a whole lot else going on there. Here in Austin, there's a music scene. There's a club scene accompanying that. There's things to do, whatever it is. There's food trucks. There's just a park you can go to and walk around. There's scenery. You can just drive around and see shit. In Topeka, like, there was nothing. There was, like, at a certain point of time, your older crowd just weren't on the streets anymore, and there were bars everywhere, and that was the only thing to do. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the reason why I feel like, the crazier stories were kind of back home, because there wasn't much to do except just that. Here, if you want to, like I said, whatever, you want to go wherever you can do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what it was. It was this existential boredom versus having stuff to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I see that list there.
Yeah.
What's your, do you want to start with maybe one of your favorites, or?
The one that I keep coming back to, probably the more exciting one. So I'm not going to do that one. I'm kidding. So like I said, I worked in radio and in the clubs, and this was kind of at a time where I was doing both. And so, there was this expo center, like a big event center, and we would have shows there. We definitely had, like, wrestling come through and do events there. And then it would be like motorcycle shows and what have you. So on the club side, at this time, we were sponsoring a motorcycle team. They would actually do races. So we had this race park called Heartland Park, Topeka. And it's like where NHRA, I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're like the big cars that shoot the quarter mile. Yeah. So there was that racetrack, and the motorcycles would do this. And so the club that I was at, Baby Dolls, was like a mile away. And it was the first thing you hit coming from that track. So after a while, there was a team that frequented us enough and kind of got it in the other GM's ear of, like, being a sponsor for them. And so we eventually would just slap our name somewhere on the bike, and we were a sponsor, and then that was their excuse to come and party all the time. So that went on. That was probably a year at this time that we'd been doing it. So we were really familiar with these people. So motorcycle show comes into town. And so this guy knows a bunch of people that are associated either with race teams or just builders or whatever, and brings a bunch of people to the club. And so we're pretty busy at this time. And one of the people that comes through has this mini chopper. exact same as the motorcycle, except it's this smaller. And so at some point during the shift, the guy had let the other GM kind of fun ride this thing around. And then throughout the rest of the night had gotten kind of drunk, and he was like, well, I'm going to leave the truck here, and it has the mini chopper in the back. I'm going to leave this here, come back for it the next day. That's when the motorcycle show is. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to leave it here, kick rocks. And so while he was getting pretty drunk, Mike, who's the other GM, was really drunk, just gone. And so we get done with the day, count all the tills and everything, and comes to the end of the night. We're kind of like floating around, seeing what's going on. And Mike is, we should probably mention that it's like a crew of 4 or 5 people, and then Mike, and we're definitely feeling good. And then Mike is noticeably gone, but that's not unfamiliar, you know? So we're like, you know, what do we want to do? You know? And Mike's like, I want to ride the bike again. I want to ride the bike again. And so I don't know why. Like I said, everybody is pretty drunk and Mike's just blackout. And for some reason, he's like the ringleader. We're just listening to him. We're not saying no. We're not stopping him. We're yes-anding him. So we get a hold of this mini chopper, which I think may have been inside the club. We had parked bikes in there before, so it was in there. So we had gotten our hands on it, but the guy left with the key. So, we can't ride this bike. Well, Mike is also like a MacGyver. That dude, I've seen him fix things with things that shouldn't fix him so many times. And again, the guy is blackout. And we're just like, well, I guess, we don't have a key. It's like, paperclip. Give me a paperclip. I can get this thing. It's like, okay, cool. Let's get a paperclip. Nobody's saying no to you. And we seriously get this paperclip, and this guy breaks it in half. It still has a ring. And there's like this plug from the ignition to the battery to the rest of the bike. And he takes this plug off, and it's like a little 4-outlet plug, and he just shoves it into 2 of the slots that are kind of diagonal from each other. Just shoves it in there, and he's like, okay, it's good to go. Like none of the lights turn on the bike. So we don't know if it's actually working or not. And not to mention, it's also a kickstart bike. I don't know why. I guess kickstarts are kind of a favorite for some people or whatever. So, there's no key that we got to kickstart this thing. It's decently cold outside. So the engine, from the time that he has ridden it to when we're trying to play with it, is dead. It's like super cold.
Right.
So we each take these turns probably like twice of just trying to kickstart this thing, and it's not going. And we're like, well, I guess it's not going to work. And Mike, again, super blackout. It's just like, face it east. Just show as far as face it east. Just face it east. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Like from Kansas, I've got farmers in my family. I've heard of this before, of like facing a car that's not working east, or, facing some piece of equipment east. For some reason, it's supposed to help it work. I don't know. We're drunk enough to be susceptible to this. We're like, all right, well, fucking face it east. We're watching the video of this the next day, and we're kind of on fast forward of this. So we're watching everybody trying to jumpstart this thing. Nothing's working. Like everybody goes to the door. And at some point, we just watch ourselves go face the spike east. 2 kicks later, and the thing starts.
No shit.
Yes.
Wow.
So the east theory still works. So now we have this bike hot wired that we're just like, okay, let's play with this thing. So the layout of the club parking lot, we've got this club is like the size of a warehouse. And then there's this front parking area, this kind of alley, and then a back parking lot area that never got used, but it's just as big as space. So we all kind of agree, don't take it on the road. We got a real busy highway right in front of us, little country road, and like a farmer supply store next to us. We're like, don't take it out of the parking lot. Just kind of, it's like a perfect track. So everybody goes through, we're riding this bike, and it gets up pretty fast. It's a lot of fun. Another drawback is that we hotwired this thing, so there are no lights on this thing, and it's 4 a.m. So it's dark except for street lights you can see. So we're all like riding. And then Mike gets on because nobody's saying no. And again, he's just gone. So everybody's stuck to doing this in this parking lot. And then Mike gets on, and sure enough, he like starts going up, and he gets up, and then there's the exit of the parking lot. He takes it and he starts going on the country road, and we're like, oh God. We said not to do. Okay. Sure enough, as soon as he starts taking off down that road, this car comes off the highway, turns on the country road, and starts heading down the same way, like right as soon as Mike is taking off that way. And we're like, oh, okay. So we kind of run to the back of the building. We see the street, and we see these lights kind of traveling up. Yeah, they're going. All of a sudden, they flip on the flash, and then they go down. And they're like flashing multiple times. And then we see taillights, and we're like, I hope he's okay. And then we start hearing, so, okay, he's still alive. Comes up, stops right at us. He's like, fuckers tried to run me off the road. Like, okay, we're done. Yeah. We're done right there. So, like I said, this thing is a part of a bike show the next day. So we have sobered up. Mike and I are going there before we open up the club that day. And we're in this expo center, and we're kind of like feeling this dread on us of like, oh God, why did we do this? And so this expo center, it's like full of bikers and half naked women and Skinner and ZZ Top, and somehow it doesn't smell like booze and alcohol, but it definitely should. And it's like set up like a maze. So you could just come in and see all these bikes. And, oh my God, that's so cool. And we're not seeing this guy anywhere. And so we're like making our way through this maze, and we're both just kind of like, oh my God. And it feels like we get to the end, and finally we see the dude in the bike. And I swear to God, it felt like a movie. Like you see the bike, and it's just like, boom, boom. The bike is there. And it's got like a hat hanging off of it, and a shirt, and like a luau lei, and a banner kind of over it. It's kind of all hidden up, and we kind of find out that it's got a bunch of cracks on it, like the paint is chipped, and it's not looking too hot. And oh my God! And the guy like says nothing to us. He's like, "Hey man, how you guys doing? You doing good? It's a fun time last night." So just kind of like, we just hang out for kind of the appropriate time. We're like, okay, we gotta go open the club, man. Let's just kick rocks. Yeah, never heard anything, but like, yeah, not one of the proudest moments. Not stopping your friend from riding a hot wired motorcycle drunk. No, that wasn't the problem. Just the next day, it was like seeing the consequence of your actions.
Yeah,
like, that's when it was like, oh man, yeah. So, I mean, that was the rowdiness that we got into.
I mean, it's a little dangerous, but it's good fun at the same time.
I mean, it's a story.
Yeah, that's a great one. Whatever happened to Mike?
I don't know. I know that he's still up in that area. Like when I got out, I didn't really keep in much contact with much of them. The DJs that I worked with, not to bring it down, but there's like 3 of them that I worked with at that time. They have all since passed away. One of them was older. One of them had health issues, and the other one I just don't know what happened. But yeah, it definitely did scatter quite a bit. And then since they have passed, my kind of contact has definitely diminished.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what exactly they've gotten into. I know that the club sold shortly after I left. And then Mike, like when it sold, just like threw his keys and was like, have fun, kicked rocks and left. So that's kind of the last I heard. I don't really know what went on with that.
He just seems like a man that has a tub of knowledge, and
Yeah.
the fact that he could do that
Well,
blackout drunk is
So
incredible.
that guy always had stories, just random stuff. So, and he always seemed to be somebody that just kind of worked odd ends and acquired the knowledge. So and this is funny that we're mentioning it. It's one of the notes I have. So, he worked with a mortician. He wasn't a mortician, but he helped deliver the bodies from like hospital to mortuary. And there were definitely some odd tales in there. But one time, I talked about how, he would come out with a little crew and we would set up somewhere, start kind of drinking and getting in our zone. So one night we're sitting in the bar and we just happened to be underneath the speaker that's like blaring. And then song went in and, hey, make some noise for da-da-da. We got so-and-so coming up here next. And don't forget to tip her. And so we're underneath the speaker just kind of shooting shit. And, Mike would start kind of reminiscing on something odd. And we're kind of having to yell quite a bit underneath this speaker. And it just so happens that he's kind of remembers something. It was like going on, and I was like, yeah, I remember. It's like the first time that I ever dealt with music dies. Ever dealt with a dead guy. I mean, blares this out in the club, and everybody like stops looking at the stage and was like turning around back at us. And he's like, say something on the mic, and I couldn't because I was dying laughing. I was like out of breath. I was like, oh my God. He's like, say something on the mic now or you're fired. And I was like, I could not say shit. And I'm like trying to tell Lunchbox, I'm like, just play. I don't care. Oh man. But yeah, he always, like, he was mortuary stuff. He was a phenomenal chef. Like he installed like a barbecue pit in the back of our club and we were serving smoked like ribs and shit. He gave me my first ever dish of like something on fire or flambe, they call it. Yeah, the dude just acquired this knowledge and just knew weird shit.
How old was he like during the time that you were there?
So like I said, 21, 22 through 24 is when I was there. He was probably like 29.
Okay.
Like still pretty young and just a couple years above me. And just acquired all this shit. And just he knew people that I worked with at a hunting range, and he had these long ties with just random stuff. And then he always had a permission to do stuff from the owner, and so we would like do random stuff in the club and just like, yeah, the guy plethora of knowledge. He was an amazing bartender. So I was telling you a little bit about this earlier. So like we had one of our friends at the club come in one time. And it was his birthday, and he was like a venue owner. And so we were like doing this thing all out. And so the bar is set up in kind of this hexagon shape. So it's like a big hexagon bar in the middle with like a chandelier. And then that's where the bartenders would kind of roll and do their stuff. And you had two wells on the other side. And then the bar itself had the lower section where the stages were. And so those were kind of like stand-up tables and everything. And then the back half was like, chairs like this, kind of sitting a little bit lower, but it all kind of leveled out. And so it was our friend's birthday. And so we're going to do this big, extravagant kind of show in the middle of the bar. And so what he would do is we had this really cheap energy drink. I couldn't even tell you the name. It's not Red Bull. It's like you would just get a box bag of it and shoot it out of a gun. And so he had filled up all these glasses, and then we had these little shot glasses that we'd fill with Jaeger. And so we'd set them up kind of in between each one. You've probably seen it a few times, but it's like, you'd set that up, throw an ice cube, cool little show. We're doing a whole hexagon shaped bar word. So it's quite a bit of alcohol that we're doing all this with.
Yeah.
And we've done it a few times. So it's not like, I wonder if this will work. It's like we've done it. We know how it looks. It's supposed to be real cool. So we're in the middle. We've just set up all the energy drinks. And now we've got all the glasses that we've delicately put in the middle of each one. Now we're going through and we're pouring the Jaeger into each one. Last step. It's been 20 minutes setting this up. So now we're on this last step and Mike's the one doing it. He's pouring this stuff out. So on this hexagon bar on the back half with the short chairs, we're in the home stretch of this. And so Mike's filling this up and some friend of a friend of a friend, we don't really know, he's pretty drunk, is sitting at the bar and like right in front of Mike. It's like filling all these drinks up and he just goes, "Dominoes, motherfucker." Boom. Slams the table and all like from right there, just half filled, not filled drinks just go down. And Mike like chucks this bottle of Jaeger on the ground. It's like, "Get the fuck out of my club."
No doubt. Get the fuck out. Wow. That's a lot of booze.
Yeah. Yeah. It was weird how calm he got later because I figured he'd be mad about that all night. Like 30 minutes later, he was fine. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's being in charge of the inventory. It wasn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Did that type of situation happen often?
As far as the hot-headedness,
No, as far as somebody coming in and wasting a bunch of booze.
not to that extent. We definitely had, I mean, you always have funny drunkards that come in and do stupid shit. We had a guy, so we had a bartender, his name was Donovan. Big dude, big old burly beard, cowboy hat. He would kind of be tough to understand sometimes. I think he just got really excited and was just and so one time I was kind of sitting at the bar and this drunk dude came in and he really passed off that he knew Donovan. So I thought they were like buddies. And so so Donovan's behind the bar doing his thing. He's ordered some appetizers from the kitchen. And so this guy's like talking. I'm like on this other table. He's like talking to me and he's like talking to Donovan. I'm like halfway paying attention. I'm like, you know, cool, you're all friends or whatever. Kind of reaches over. He starts kind of eating Donovan's shit. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I guess you're buddies and whatever. And Donovan finally like turns around and sees him and like loses his shit. And not just loses it, like climbs over the wells, climbing out of the hexagon to get this guy. Loses his shit. It was, yeah, you get characters like that every so often.
Yeah. That keeps it entertaining, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the thing I would say about the Kansas clubs is there were definitely characters working in there.
Yeah.
You know, not saying that there were not characters here, but they definitely stood out.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
I mean, it seems like it was a fun environment to be in, even though there wasn't much to do outside of there.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was a great place to be when you were.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for sure. Cause you know, it was just a lot of fun to be had there, you know, and it didn't necessarily have to involve the dancers.
Right.
You know, it was kind of the camaraderie that you built with all these characters. It's like what I said about when I worked in Austin, I worked at a club called Expose and they'd shut down. But one thing I loved about that club, and they weren't like the busiest all the time, and it wasn't like the standout club, but like the people that were there, it felt like Cheers. You know, it was Cheers with scenery. But like, yeah, it was just once you got kind of nestled into a spot and you kind of knew the characters that were there and kind of what everybody's little quirks were, like, you know, you get that with bars now. But yeah, like at that time frame, you're just, you know, you're at the right age to be making these kind of dumb mistakes, to be kind of hitting the party hard and to be doing this stuff. Like as an MC, I don't know how many nights I had where like I had a wireless microphone. I don't know how many nights I had where I could like walk out the back, still here at the club, be outside and be like, hey, give it up for Misty on stage. We got Samantha coming up here next. D, I'm going to need another shot when I get back in there, you know? Yeah. I mean, definitely couldn't do that stuff now. You know, we're approaching 40,
Right.
you know, that hurts
Yeah.
nowadays. But yeah, you were spry enough back then to be able to do all this stupid shit and turn around and open up the next day and do it again.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you miss it at all, even though you're a little older now?
No.
You don't miss it?
No.
So you were just happy that you had that experience, and you're glad that you moved on?
When my last club closed, there was a little bit of transitionary before I figured out where I was going to go next. But I was definitely done. You know, I'd done it for over 10 years, almost 15. And that's not a scene that you're supposed to retire at. You know, you kind of go in, you do your time, you get out.
Yeah.
Be smart about it. I know a lot of dancers that are like doctorates now because they had that goal in mind. Come in, make your money, do your thing, go back, go to school, get done, get out. I refer to myself now like gladly as retired DJ, you know, like I've thought about it now, you know, I'm working in the food industry now. I'm helping run food trucks and that's not a lucrative career. I'm doing it because it's a love now.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not paying the bills all the time. And I often think back like, man, should I just like nut up and go back to the club and pander smut for a little bit and make the money again? And I'm always coming back to like, no, you know, I did everything.
Yeah.
It's the reason why, like when I hop jobs now, I feel like I've climbed that ladder. I'm not going to see anything new. It feels kind of not even a lateral move. It kind of feels like I'm going back down a little bit. Maybe the cash will be there. I don't think it's going to be there right now just because the economy, like the interesting thing too, is like, you got a feel for where the economy was going to go by your clientele.
Yeah.
You know, if it was pretty tight, you knew it was about to be hard times. And I can only imagine that it's pretty tough right now. So I get those thoughts of like, man, maybe I should make some money going back there. But then I'm like, nah, man, you saw those waves. We're in the middle of it right now. It's not going to be any better.
Yeah.
You know, the only difference is you're not going to see daylight during regular hours.
It's good that you see that. Well, basically, you found something that makes you happy.
Yeah.
You know, and the other good thing though is if you really needed to, you could go back.
Yeah.
If you at least you have that option because some people don't have
until this stops working. Like I can finagle it.
Yeah.
As I need to.
Yeah.
But I definitely, you know, there's no longing to get back into it.
Right.
Like I know when Expo closed, there were a decent amount of dancers that have moved on and bar staff employees too. And there were some that went right back into it. And I don't look down on them in any way, shape, or form. You know, for them that was their income. They know that scene. Like for me, if I went back, I know that scene. I know what I can do. I know I can get out of it.
Yeah.
But they're in that pocket of time still where it still works for them. So, you know, Godspeed, do it.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I just don't see it anymore. You know, I've climbed that mountain. I'm not going to get back there.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd much rather take new challenges on, given how challenging they are. Still do it head on.
Definitely.
You know? Yeah.
And you have another gig too, right?
So I'm doing food truck work right now, a place called Pedrozo's, and I was doing a vegan truck that I was help kind of lead, run everything, but they shut down. So this pizza spot's gonna be coming in, and I'm helping kind of with deliveries and learning about kind of business establishment end on that.
Yeah.
And then when I came to Austin, my focus when I came here was to take music and sound recording a little more seriously. And so I went to a recording arts school for a year, Media Tech. It's where I met Mac and Mordecai and a bunch of other people.
Shout out to those guys.
Yes. Yeah, miss those guys.
Yeah.
But I learned kind of the ins and outs of like how to do this. And now I'm working at UT as a recording tech. So I get to finally exercise that degree a little bit.
Nice.
And, you know, it's a pretty easy gig right now. I'm hoping to grow a little bit more with it as time goes on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get to do that. And then, like I said, music was a focus. And I've got a band where we have our own studio that we're doing all the work in right now. And I get to kind of exercise that muscle a little bit. Plus, I get to put the radio knowledge into there. I don't think I have any club knowledge I could put into there just yet.
Never know, man.
I mean, how to
Never know.
manage crazy stories, maybe.
Maybe. If a console's not working, just face that bitch east.
Face it east,
You know?
man. Shit always works when you face it east. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's more of the Kansas.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff. But yeah. I mean, yeah. Just coming back to it, I think I'm good with the clubs, and I'm growing somewhere else right now. So the benefit is I get to have these fun stories. Like, you know, I don't try to be that personality or person in the places I'm working at now. So when I'm working at a truck with a bar staff, or, you know, interacting with the clientele, and I kind of casually bring up like, yeah, when I worked in radio, we did this thing and met whoever or whatever, they'll kind of be like, whoa, wait, when'd you do that? I was like, I was like 17 through 24 when I did that. You know, it's like, you're working at a food truck now? It's like, yeah, you know, it's just kind of the next thing I wanted to try out. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, you get these stories. And of course, when you start talking about clubs, you know, everybody's ears, like I said, everybody's ears pop up. They're like, oh my God, tell me the crazy shit. It's like, well, it doesn't involve any strippers. Okay. But we did hot wire this bike. And one time this guy yelled dead guy really loud.
I enjoyed the stories very much. So
Yeah.
before we close this out, man, what is the name of the band?
They're called First Base Runner.
First Base Runner?
So if you look it up on Instagram, it's going to be 1ST Base Runner.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Well, anybody that's listening, please check that out. And Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day once again.
Thank you for having me. You know, I was telling you, I haven't done this setup since radio. So this was a nice little nostalgia trip to get to hear myself in the cans and
Yeah, man.
talk on this again. So
Well, you're welcome back anytime. And I know that you have more stories, or if you just want to hop on and listen to someone else's story and all that stuff, you are welcome back anytime,
I
man.
appreciate that.
Awesome, man.
Yes, sir.
Take care. Cheers.